right, good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, brought to you by Cross IT. Our presenters for this serving are Laura Betts and Bobby Ritz. Today we are looking at FileMaker's Manage Database dialog, which covers tables, fields, and relationships. If managing the tables and fields and relationships of a database is not something you regularly do, if at all, I encourage you to go ahead and hang around because knowledge of this area of the FileMaker solution will help you understand why scripts or layouts are built a certain way and do the things that they do. Today's webinar is being recorded, so if you miss anything, you'll have a chance to go back and watch it again. Also, please remember to use the chat feature to ask a question or leave a comment, and if you do, you'll have a chance to win lunch on us. And so, without further ado, let me turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Todd. I'm going to be talking about the tables and fields part of FileMaker within the managed database. So basically with any database, it has information or data and they are stored within the table and fields. So fields is kind of what contains the specific data information type of things. So if you have something like you need to store first name and last name, so those would be two different types of fields. And so they are within tables, and tables are kind of a group of related fields. So if you want last name or first name, those would be obviously related. If you're not, you can see that there are is records on here as well. Records are kind of like the individual sort of different types of individual things. So if you take like people, it would be like each different people within that table. So in order to create these things, we will go into Manage Database, in which the way you go to it is File Manage Database or Control Command Shift D, depending on if you're Windows or Mac. And so for the tables part of the Manage Database, this is kind of what you will see. A table is kind of a unique set of records and fields, and each file can contain more than one, as you can see is listed here. So we have our different columns here with the table names, in which you'll create it down here with the create button once you type it in. And then if you select a certain table, you can also change the name by typing it and then clicking change. Source, generally a lot of this will be coming from FileMaker, but there's ways to integrate it, so it can come from something like ODBC, which then the table would be listed that way. Details would include fields, how many fields and records are within the table. And then the occurrences, it lists all the table occurrences in the graph, which is in the relationships, which relationships will be talked about in a little bit later. And down here we have different control buttons. Obviously the delete, in case we want to delete a table. Copy, we can actually copy table and paste it. You can do that from one file to another. And then there's the import button, which we've talked about in a different Lunch and Learn of a little bit of how to import from like Excel files or spreadsheets into things to create a table. So another thing in this is how to sort the view of it, which you can click some of the column names to rearrange. Also, this drop down in the top right, you can change that. One of these things is custom order, and if you use the arrows and the left of the table names, you can click and drag into whichever order you want. So that's a little bit on tables, but now we can go into fields, in which you can click the Fields tab at the top here, but if you double click any of the tables, it'll go to the specific fields that are related to the tables. So now that we're looking at the fields, we can tell which fields that this is related to which table by this top left here. If we want to switch tables, we don't have to go back to the tables and double click here. We can just switch the tables from this drop down. So the sorting is also very similar, where they have the top right drop down and the custom order with the arrows at the side, or you can click the column headings. Down below there's comments, in which that's for each individual field. So if you click on a field, you can add a comment. The buttons down here, those are fairly similar to the ones in tables in dealing with field names, but it also will change if you do different types or adds comments. And then there's the duplicate, which instead of copying and pasting a field, you can just duplicate it directly. So a little bit more about the columns in here. Obviously you have the field name, that's pretty straightforward. You type that in and then you can create or change it. The type, we've gone over different types of fields at an earlier Lunch and Learn, so it's listed there and it can be changed in the drop down here. And then the third column is options and comments, which I think by default it shows the options that we have, and then if you click to toggle it, it'll show the comments that you have for each field. So looking at the options, there's 4 different tabs within them. First one is audit winter, so when you first create a record, this kind of fills in information and you can set that up through this tab. The second tab is validation, so when there's information entered into the field and you want to make sure that it's entered correctly or within certain bounds, you can set up it here real easily. There's different ways to check that, but this is an easy way to do it on the managed database level. Third tab is storage, which the bottom part we've talked about indexing before with like finds in order to make your database run faster. But then at the top there's also global storage, which that when you mark a field that way, then that means that field can be used anywhere, not just within that table or table occurrence for most of all the system. And then there's repetitions, which is kind of older way of doing different things instead of like records, but not used as much anymore. And then for hiragana, that more has to do with the Japanese text and type of thing. I don't deal a lot with that, and there's not much in here, so there's not much to say about that. But let me show you how to create tables and fields. So again, we go up here to File, Manage Database. You can see here that we have our list of tables. We can create a new table. So down here with table name, we can just delete that out. Name it the way we want to. Say we want to name it, create a contacts thing, table. We type that in, click create. You can see it's added there. If we need to change the name, we select that table, change it, and then change it. And obviously you can delete the selected one or copy and paste it. So let's go into the fields of that table. So in the fields, whenever you create a table, there'll be default fields set up, which this is the default that FileMaker gives with the primary key and creation and modification information. But let's say we want to actually create a different field. So we'll go down to the field name and we'll say we want to have the first name. So we type in first name. The default type is text, so since we want the name to be text, we can just leave that as here. And we can add comment of person's first name, and then click create. And you can see that it's added as a field. Now we can do that again with the last name, or we can just click duplicate, and it will duplicate the field that you have selected and just add copies. So I can just delete that, add his last name, change the comment, and now you can see that this has changed. So let's say we want to add a different field, like birth date, and we want that actually to be the date field. So we would go into here and click date, and then we would create that. Or if we want to say have something like zip code, which is like number, you can do that. Choose number, click create. So that's kind of the creation of how to make tables in fields. Whenever you click on a field, you can go into the options, which again has the 4 tabs that I mentioned. For new ones, it doesn't have anything, but the default fields, you can see that some of the stuff is already entered in there. So that's kind of the basics of tables and fields and how to create them. And for the relationships, I'll give it over to Bobby.
All right, thank you, Laura. As Laura mentioned, I will be going over relationships within FileMaker. The first thing that I want to do is actually just kind of abstractly go over what a relationship is, just even outside of the normal FileMaker context. So a relationship is a way of relating data from one table to data in another table. It can also be referred to as a join. And typically relationships are described using terms as one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many. And you could also, you might also hear the term self-join when talking about relationships between tables. Just to go over a couple new terms as well. When you talk about relationships, you usually have what is called a primary key and a foreign key. Primary keys, it's just a unique record identifier. You should have one for every single table that you have within your database. It could be something as simple as like a serialized number, or you could use some other unique identifier. FileMaker has a getUniqueID function that will generate a universally unique ID for you if you want to use that. So that's what primary key, that's pretty simple. A foreign key is a field within another table, and it contains the primary key of the record that it is related to in that other table, which sounds kind of confusing. We'll show some examples later on that help clear that up, but it's just important to understand that when you talk about relationships, you need some sort of match fields to base that relationship on, and typically those are primary and foreign keys. The other thing I want to do is go over why we have relationships in databases, and this is very important to understand. So I came up with a little pet database example that we have here. We have a pet name, an owner name, and a phone number for the owner. And we have our primary key right here, which again is just a serialized number. It's a unique identifier that we could use on the back end to help create relationships. We have a couple issues though with the way this table is set up. We have some dual data entry, which isn't necessarily bad, but it can lead to a lot of errors down the road. Dual data entry, of course, is time wasting. Having to type in Bobby twice
is wasteful in terms of time. It's wasteful in terms of space because now you have to store that that data twice. And also, if you were to update that information, like if I wanted to put my name as Robert in the database, I'd have to type it in 2 places. So the solution to this is a fancy word called normalization. All normalization is it's a fancy way of saying that we're separating one table into 2 related tables. And so we did that right here with the pet table. So again, we have our pet table, which was already existing. It has a primary key and our pet name. We added in a foreign key field. I'll get there in a second. And we split the data into pet and owner table. So if we look at what our owner table looks like, again, we have a primary key, which is our unique identifier. We have a name, so Bobby and Jenny, and we have the phone numbers. Now, if you notice, Bobby's only in there once, so we have no dual data entry. There's not multiple listings of Bobby. My phone number is only in there once. And of course, we do have Jenny's number, which is 8675309. That is in there as well. And now to actually kind of look at how the relationship looks from a data perspective. So we have our foreign key right here. And so if we look at our old slide, Bobby has Lucy and Chipper as pets. All right, and so if we look here, Lucy and Chipper both have a value of 1 in the owner foreign key, and that corresponds to the primary key of Bobby in the owner table. And so that's how your data will look when you use a foreign key and primary key to set up your relationship. And again, notice that we don't have Bobby in there twice, so if I needed to update my name, I only have to do it once. We don't have to worry about wasteful data or data entry errors. And so really when you talk about why you have relationships in a database, if you don't use relationships, you're not taking full advantage of the power of a relational database like FileMaker. Okay, so that's just a very broad overview of relationships. Let's talk about how we get a relationship into FileMaker. So here are some specifics on relationships within FileMaker. So a relationship in FileMaker can contain one or more criteria. They are bidirectional, so they work both ways. If I'm looking at the person from the context of a person at the pet table, for instance, I could see the relationship, and vice versa. If I'm in the pet table, I could see the related person. And within FileMaker, we use the term table occurrences to refer to tables within the relationship graph, which we'll see here in a moment. For your match fields, you can use numbers, text, timestamp dates, time or stored calculation fields. Relationships can be sorted. You do have the option of a self-join within FileMaker, but you'd have to, when you do it, it will create another table occurrence of that same table. And that, which we're not going to get into table occurrences too much today. And then you can create records based on relationships, which is a very useful feature for populating your data. All right, so now we're going to actually go under the hood and create a relationship. And then I'll show you on this layout using a portal what that related data will look like. So I'm going to hit File, Manage Database. And I think Laura did a great job of going over tables and fields, but we're going to hop over here into the Relationships tab. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I don't think I could quite zoom in. Let's see. Yeah. So right here I have a table called Pet, and over here I have a table called Person. Again, so a relationship is between 2 tables. Within the FileMaker relationships graph, you can see relationships indicated by these lines with a little square in the middle, and that square will show either an equal sign or an X, and that indicates what type of relationship criteria, I suppose, is used to form that relationship. For right now, though, we're just going to focus on like the equal relationship because that's the easiest. So again, I have a person, I have a pet. Right here, I have a primary key, which we have called person ID. And over here in my pet table, again, I have a foreign key for owner. FileMaker makes it super easy to create relationships. I just select my match field in the person table, which again is the person ID, which is the primary key for that table. I can just drag it over here to my other table. And I will select the foreign key I built specifically for this relationship in the pet table. And voila, it creates the relationship. And we can double click on that equal sign to edit the relationship, and it will also allow us to see the details of that relationship as well. So here we are in the edit relationship box. Again, we have our primary key and foreign key. We can see that the relationship is set up to match based on those fields being equal. We do have more options for that. There's a slew of inequalities we could use within our match fields to build that relationship. We'll get into those here in a second. There are some additional options that I'm just going to go through quickly. So you can have multiple match criteria, and you could, to help build those more quickly, FileMaker gave us a duplicate button, and you can also delete different match criteria. Useful just once you get in here. I am going to focus on one specific feature right here, which is the allow creation of records in this table via relationship, and that's something that is unique to FileMaker. I guess other database systems have it, but not all of them do, and it's a very useful feature for quickly creating related records. When that box is checked, it allows you to very easily create records in this table, which would be the pet table, from a layout based on the person table, and it will automatically fill in our foreign keys appropriately. There's also options for what we call a cascading delete, which we're not going to get into, and you can also sort records from here as well, which we're not going to get too into. So I create our relationship, I hit OK, and it takes me back here into browse mode. I'm going to hop back over to our slide here that I'm going to use to demo our portal. And I think we've seen portals before in some of our other Lunch and Learns. A portal is just a layout object that can be used to display related data. So I'm going to set it to show data from the pet table. And again, our current context is the person table. So for each person, they could have multiple pets. So it's a one person can have many pets, one-to-many type relationship. When I create a portal, it will ask me what fields I want to have displayed there. So I will put pet name and date acquired. I'm not going to worry too much about formatting right now. It is kind of ugly. I apologize for that. Okay, so I'm on a person record for Bobby Ritz. Here's a portal of related data. It's empty right now because I have no related pet data in my database. So how do the question is, how do I get the data in there? And so it matches. Going back, if you remember, to our managed database, when I created the relationship, I checked that box for create records based on relationship. And so what that allows me to do is I could just type Lucy in here and a date acquired of 10/1/2017, and it will create that record, and I don't even have to worry about managing the foreign keys. It's just automatically linked. If we do go to a table view of pets, we could see that the foreign key just automatically got put in there. So again, very simple, very easy to create relationships and populate data based on those. I'll keep that open just to showcase. If I type in my other pet's name of Chipper and his acquisition date of 7/4/2013. We'll see here in our pet table, we now have two records. Both of their foreign keys are the same. And again, just to give another idea, if Laura's, Laura, I apologize, I don't know any of your pets' names. I know she's had a cat since a while, I believe. And so if we enter in that Laura has a cat, we'll see here that there's now a third record in the pet table, but it has a different foreign key corresponding to Laura, where these two correspond to Bobby. Alright, so that's how relationships work and how they could work very easily within FileMaker. Real quickly, we're going to go over the different types of inequalities that can be used in match criteria within a relationship. So we showcase the equal, this field equals that field to build that relationship. You also have not equal, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. And all those are pretty self-explanatory. If the less than, greater than, equal tos, those are really useful for dates. So if you want to see if something was acquired after a specific date, you could use that or use those to build that sort of relationship. The Cartesian join is very unique to FileMaker. And it's tricky to explain, but if we have our two tables and we have a relationship based on Cartesian join, which is what this X is here, what it's saying is that if I'm in this table, I will see all records in this other table that have any value within that match field. And so to go again here to our portal example, if I were to change this to a Cartesian join instead of an equal, first you see that the equal sign is replaced by an X to indicate Cartesian join. And now for every record in the person table, which I'm on, you will see all the records that have a value in the pet table. It's not as widely used as these other types of relationships, but it can be useful for certain things. So again, that is a Cartesian join, just to kind of show you guys what it was. But now I'm going to do a quick demo with inequalities, just to again kind of show some examples. I'm going to navigate over here. And I'm going to hop back into our database manager. Again, to get into manage database, I just did Command-Shift-D on a Mac, and that quickly got me here to the manage database section. And so just to quickly show off an inequality match, I'm going to use the date acquired, and I'm going to just do a less than or equal to. I'm going to hit change, and that will change my previously existing match criteria to be what I just selected. I will hit OK. One thing you'll notice is that this checkbox for allow creation of records got unselected. That happened once I introduced an inequality into my match criteria. The other thing you'll notice, or you might not notice, so this is actually a global. This date field is a global field, so you can use globals within match criteria. It's just that you might get unexpected consequences. You lose some of your bidirectional ability to view data once you use a global. All right, and just real quick here, because I do believe we are running out of time. I'm going to put a portal on here, again, to my pet table. I'm just going to, again, just put the pet name and the date acquired. Over here, I'm going to put our date global. Globals are cool because they are session specific. And so I can type a value in here of, actually that won't work. So I'll type a date value in here of 1/1/2010. And if you remember, based on our relationship we set up, we said that we want to see for the criteria of our relationship this date being less than the date acquired. And so that's what we see right here. So I entered a date of 1/1/2010, and we see in our relationship portal all the records that have a acquisition date that is greater than 1/1/2010. Just to kind of further show this example, if I were to make this July 6th of 2014, it only shows Lucy now because that was the only dog or animal that was acquired after July 6th of 2014. So in a nutshell, that is relationships. And to quote Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. So I will hand it over to Todd with some questions.
All right, thank you, Bobby. We do have a few questions that came in, so let's just go ahead and dive.
That you shouldn't use certain characters.
I mentioned fields you can use, but the fields that you can't use are unstored calculations, summaries, and container fields. So those are three that you definitely cannot use to build relationships.
All right, thank you very much. Looks like we had another question come in. Just somebody was wondering, what's the maximum number of tables I'm able to create in a file?
Okay, the maximum numbers for each FileMaker file of tables you can have is 1 million. So, yeah, quite a lot. Hopefully not that many.
All right, very good. It looks like we have one more question for Bobby, and that is there a preferred method for setting up relationships on the relationship graph?
Yes. In terms of how you organize your relationships and table occurrences in a relationship graph, there's standards that are out there that different developers utilize. We here at Cross use the anchor buoy method of organizing our table occurrences and relationships. If you're really interested, I would Google it. There's a lot of different thoughts and opinions as to what works best. A lot of it depends on what you're trying to do, though. So, although if you ask Todd, anchor buoy is the best, right, Todd?
That would be correct, yes. There's many ways to do it, and then there's my way. So, all right. Well, I think looks like that's all the questions that we have, and that's all the time that we have. Thank you all for. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks again to Laura and Bobby for sharing their knowledge. And if you like what you saw here, we certainly encourage you to click the thumbs up and share this video. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. There is a survey that you can find in the description, so we encourage you to fill that out. We do want your feedback so that we can make this as great as it can be. And also, if you have a FileMaker problem that you're stuck on, go ahead and ask us to see if we can solve it, and if we can maybe use it as a future Lunch and Learn topic. You can submit those topics through nutshell@crossit.com or through the survey that I just mentioned. And we are glad to have served you a Lunch and Learn. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.